Obinna sent spies, cloaked in charms, to watch Adeze's family. Strange accidents plagued their farm. Goats died without reason, their crops withered, and storms tore through their roof. But despite every hardship, the child survived. Her mother often dreamt of a tall woman wrapped in white cloth, Nena's spirit, who whispered, "Protect her, for she carries the light of the ancestors." When Adaeze turned 7, the mark on her chest began to glow faintly at night. Sometimes, she spoke words in a tongue no one understood, and when she touched ailing animals, they rose and walked again. The villagers grew divided. Some said she was a blessing. Others said she was a curse that would bring Obinna's wrath upon them all. By now, Nena was near her end, her body too weak to rise from her mat. Yet her spirit was still sharp. She called for Adeze's parents and warned them. Obinna will not stop until he has her heart. Take her to the sacred grove when the moon is darkest. There she will learn who she is. But the journey was perilous. The forest was crawling with Obinna's shadow beasts, creatures twisted by the mask, half human, half nightmare. Still, Adeze's family set out, guided by the seer's words. When Obinna learned that the child had fled, he was furious. He donned the mask fully, letting the shadows engulf him. His body stretched unnaturally tall, his eyes glowed red, and his voice was no longer human. The mask hissed, "Bring her to the altar. With her soul, I will break free of these forests and rule the earth." Obinna unleashed storms, called wolves from the hills, and turned the trees themselves against the fugitives. Villagers who once feared him now bowed as worshippers, chanting his name like a god. The world trembled as the ritualist grew stronger. In the sacred grove, Adaeze knelt before a circle of stones older than time. Her parents held her close, trembling, as the ground began to hum with ancestral power. The spirit of Nena appeared one last time, her form glowing faintly in the moonlight. She placed a hand on Adeze's head and whispered, "You are the end of the shadow. Within you burns the light of 1,000 ancestors. When the mask comes for you, do not run. Stand." The mark on Adeze's chest flared like fire. Her eyes glowed white, and the air around her pulsed with raw energy. The earth itself seemed to rise in her defense. The clash begins. That night, Obinna arrived at the sacred grove, his body cloaked in darkness, his laughter echoing through the trees. Shadows swarmed, howling, stretching long claws. But Adaeze stood unshaken. The ancestors' light radiated from her, burning the shadows that touched it. The ground cracked beneath them, spirits screamed, and the mask of shadows glowed brighter than ever, desperate to consume her. Obinna raised his blade, his voice booming. "Child of the eclipse, your blood will be the crown of my throne." Adeze's small voice answered, steady and fearless, "No, Obinna. Tonight the shadows end." And with that, the final battle between the ritualist and the prophecy child began. The sacred grove quaked as Obinna stepped into the circle of stones. His form was no longer entirely human. Horns jutted from his head, his fingers stretched into claws, and shadows oozed from his body like smoke. The mask's cracked surface glowed blood-red, its eyes alive with hunger. Behind him, legions of shadow beasts slithered and roared, their forms twisting into monstrous shapes, half men, half creatures of nightmare. Adaeze stood small in the center of the grove, her parents clutching each other at the edge. Her chest mark blazed like a sun, and though her knees trembled, her gaze did not falter. Obinna struck first. With a roar, he summoned spears of shadow that shot across the grove, black lightning tearing through trees. Adaeze raised her hands instinctively, and the stones around her glowed, forming a shimmering shield of ancestral energy. The spears shattered against it like glass. Obinna laughed, his voice echoing unnaturally. "You think a child can defy me? I consumed warriors greater than you before you drew your first breath." Adeze's voice rang clear. "I am not alone. The ancestors walk with me." Her mark exploded in light, sending a wave that burned through the first wave of shadow beasts. They shrieked as their forms dissolved into ash. Obinna charged, his clawed hand aiming for her throat. Adaeze lifted both palms, releasing a surge of white fire that clashed with his darkness. The grove became a storm of light and shadow, swirling violently, tearing bark from trees and shaking the earth. For every shadow Obinna unleashed, Adaeze's light pushed back. As Adaeze grew into her teenage years, her powers deepened. She could heal wounds with a touch, speak to the spirits of the forest, and see glimpses of the future in her dreams. But these gifts came at a cost. Every time she used them, she felt weaker, as though the ancestors drew part of her own life force. She longed to live as a normal girl, play in the fields, laugh with friends, maybe even one day marry. But destiny pressed heavy on her shoulders. One evening, the spirit of Nenna appeared to her once more. The war is not finished, Adaeze. The fragments are stirring. They seek new hosts. If they reunite, the mask will rise again. Adaeze lowered her head. Must it always be me? I am only one girl. The spirit's voice was gentle but firm. You carry the light, and light must always rise to meet darkness. He summoned wolves of night she called falcons of flame. He sent waves of choking black fog she cleared it with winds that smelled of ancient rain. He struck with claws like steel she met them with a staff of glowing wood that appeared in her hand. The grove was no longer silent, it was a battlefield between realms. The mask of shadows screamed, its voice piercing the night. Obinna, offer her blood. Break her spirit. The mask fed more power into him, warping his body into something monstrous. His chest split with cracks of glowing black, and his shadow stretched higher than the Irako trees. He was no longer Obinna. He was the mask itself walking in flesh. Adaeze faltered under the sheer force of it. Her shield cracked and she fell to her knees, blood on her lips. Her parents cried out, but a gust of shadow threw them back. The mask's voice hissed. Die, child of the eclipse. But as Adaeze collapsed, she heard voices, soft, strong, familiar. The voices of countless ancestors. They rose like a chorus within her, echoing in her bones. Stand, Adaeze. We are with you. Her body glowed brighter, her mark becoming a blazing sun. From the stones around the grove, spirits emerged, warriors, mothers, hunters, kings, seers, all who had lived before. They formed a circle around her, their hands raised in unison. Adaeze rose, her eyes now pure white fire. Her small voice carried the strength of generations. Obinna, your time has ended. Shadows cannot live where the sun rises. She raised the glowing staff, and the spirits channeled their light through her. A column of brilliance shot into the sky, splitting the clouds. Obinna roared and hurled all his shadows at her in one final desperate storm. Light met darkness. The explosion blinded the world. When the brilliance faded, the sacred grove was silent. Obinna lay on the ground, his body twisted and broken, the mask shattered into fragments. The shadows were gone, dissolved into the earth like smoke. Adaeze stood trembling, her staff fading into nothing, her mark dimming to a faint glow. She had survived, but she was forever changed. At sunrise, the villagers gathered at the grove. They saw the shattered mask and the young girl who had destroyed it. Many wept. Some bowed. Others stared in awe and fear. Adaeze was no longer just a child, she was the bearer of the ancestors' light, the one who had ended a curse that haunted generations. But though the mask was broken, Nenna's spirit whispered a final warning. The shadows are defeated, but fragments remain. If ever greed awakens, the darkness may rise again. Adaeze clenched her fists. She knew her journey was only beginning. After Obinna's fall, Adaeze became a legend overnight. The villagers hailed her as the daughter of the sun. Songs were sung of her bravery, and mothers pointed at her when telling their children that courage could defeat even the darkest evil. But Adaeze was still a child. She did not understand why some villagers bowed in reverence while others avoided her with fear in their eyes. At night, she often cried in her sleep, haunted by the explosion of light and the scream of the mask as it shattered. Though the battle was over, the war in her heart had only begun. The shattered pieces of the mask were collected by the elders and buried in 7 different sacred grounds. Each shard was sealed with charms, hidden from sight and guarded with oaths. But shadows never die easily. At night, each fragment pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, and in the dreams of the greedy and ambitious, the shards whispered, "Pick me up, just a touch, and all power will be yours." Across the land, strange events began again. Farmers reported livestock vanishing without a trace. A traveler spoke of meeting a man with eyes like red coals. A river turned black for 3 days, and its fish floated lifeless to the surface. The elders grew uneasy. They feared that although the mask was broken, its curse had scattered.